All right, good morning, everyone. Bruchim Abayim. Welcome to the Daniel S. Loeb Torah Center this morning. The class is dedicated in love and memory of Lily Safra, Alea Shalom, on her third Azkara, Leah Bat Chana. She and her family still do a tremendous amount of work helping the Jewish community, the world at large, outside the Jewish community, incredible individuals, and we are proud to be recipients of their tremendous largesse over the years that the Bet Knesset, the synagogue, has been here, Baruch Hashem. There is an interesting discussion among the Rabbanim. Is it better to believe good or is it better to do good? Are we believers or are we doers? This is a very famous discussion. And let's say a person decides to do a mitzvah. Let's say a person decides to give charity, put on tefillin, whatever it is. But their motives are not pure. They're doing it because of honor. They're doing it because they want their name plaque on the wall for the donation they've given. They are doing it because they want people to look at them and say, wow, that's an impressive person. How exactly do we view this idea of maaseh, actions, over belief? Or is it better that a person doesn't do the action but believes in good instead? This is the discussion that is famous and comes up many, many times in Jewish thought. However, what I want to discuss today is a possible answer from a very unlikely source. And the source is a king of Moab. He was actually a new king, and his name was Balak. He has an entire parsha named after him. Balak was a king who took on his position after the Jewish people defeated Sichon and Og. That created a power vacuum, a void, and Balak stepped up and took that position. He realized that he wanted to kill and wipe out the Jewish people, and he realized that weapons was not going to help. So he said, well, they pray to Hashem, and therefore what we should attempt to do is to use our words to attack them instead. And so he takes a vast amount of money, he takes a lot of very prestigious people, and he goes and employs a prophet by the name of Bilam. Bilam was a Navi, a prophet of his day. He was someone who had tremendous potential to do good. He was someone who had an extremely high prophetic ability. Unfortunately, he used his powers of prophecy to just bring pleasures to himself. Physical pleasures, financial pleasures, and all other pleasures of the guf, of the body. That's how he spent his entire time. Balak realized this about him and said, perfect, I got my partner in crime. I'm going to go to Bilam, I'm going to give him lots of money, I'm going to give him a lot of kavod, a lot of honor, and I'm going to use him to curse the Jewish people. That was Balak's concept. And Bilam is reluctant and then goes, and the power and the money and the honor, he's basically a narcissist is what Bilam is. He realizes that this is his mission, and he attempts to do it. Baruch Hashem, God thinks otherwise, and God turns Bilam's klalot, Bilam's curses, to brachot instead. Okay? Along the way, the following happens. Bilam says to Balak, the king of Moab, and it's important that he's the king of Moab, you'll see why in a second. And he says, look, I'm going to need your help. I need you to set up 7 altars in 3 different locations. And we see as the parasha progresses, this Balak keeps setting up altars to sacrifice animals on, hoping that this will persuade God to allow them to curse the Jewish people. This is the plan. So he sets up 7 altars in 3 places, and on each altar he brings 2 animals. 2 animals. That ends up being 42 different animals were brought by Balak and Bilam in order to curse the Jewish people. Now, that number is an important and interesting number in of itself. We know the Jewish people went 42 journeys, stops and starts during their 40 years in the desert. There were Membes and Saad. There were 42 journeys. But leaving that aside for a second, let's just put ourselves into Balak's head. Why is Balak setting up these altars? He's setting them up because he wants to bring sacrifices. Why does he want to bring sacrifices? Because he wants to use them as a means to curse, to kill the Jewish people through their words, and their cursing. Is this a bad person? I can't think of anything worse, right? This guy who is not even being threatened by them, right? They're outside of Israel, they're going into Israel, and there he is wanting to curse and destroy the Jewish people preemptively before we even get into the land of Israel, though we had no beef with him whatsoever. The Gemara says something unbelievable. You're going to learn a concept from here that's going to take you right through life, which is, even if your motivations for doing a act is wrong, even if your motivations to give the tzedakah is not because you care about the cause, you don't even care about the mitzvah, you're doing it because you want your name on the wall, right? You don't want to see an anonymous plaque on the wall. You want Moshe Goldberg written on the wall. That mitzvah is still worth a tremendous amount. Your motivations, although they're krum, they're not good, you do it, lo lishma, not for the right reason, balishma, you'll end up doing more acts. The acts themselves are going to end up changing you. That is how the rabbis understand the concept of people doing acts for ulterior, even self-aggrandizing motivations. It's better to do it with the wrong motivation. It's better to put on your tefillin because you want people to look at you and think, oh, this person goes to synagogue, right? This person's come. Makes no difference. Just do the act with not even an ulterior motive, but for a bad motive. Do you know what Balak was rewarded with by doing these altars to curse the Jewish people? He still brought a sacrifice to Hashem. It wasn't to avodah zarah, but it was for a bad motive. Hashem organized it that from Balak, Movi, he's from Moab, would come which famous woman? Ruth. Ruth was a direct descendant of Balak. The great Ruth, the convert to Judaism. She ends up converting in the days of Naomi and Boaz. She ends up having children. And she has lineage that takes her down to David HaMelech. Ruth converts as a Moaviah, and she becomes a holy Jewish woman, and from her comes King David, David HaMelech. Who is the child of David HaMelech? Shlomo. Shlomo builds the Beit HaMikdash. What happens to the Beit HaMikdash? You bring korbanot. What an unbelievable connection. You know in whose merit Shlomo HaMelech brought thousands of korbanot in the first Beit HaMikdash, the first temple? His great grandmother Ruth. Because without her, he would not have been born. Right? That's his great grandmother. And she came from Moab. And in what merit does she have to convert in order to start the whole system going? Balak, her ancestor, created these altars in order to, you can't make it up, in order to bring korbanot to curse the Jewish people. So his motivations were terrible, but his actions were good. But his motivations, actions, we always go with actions. Those are your actions. From those korbanot that Balak brought, they didn't go anywhere. Energy, Newton taught us, doesn't just disappear. It just ends up taking on a different form. And so too when it comes to King David, coming from Shlomo HaMelech, coming from Ruth, those korbanot of Balak ended up leading to the Beit HaMikdash being built, and sacrifice is being brought. There we see this amazing connection, says the Gemara in Sotah, of even if your motivations to do a mitzvah are not pure, they can have incredible, long-lasting effects and impacts. Okay? One last idea I want to share with you. We know that Bilam described the Jewish people in very beautiful terms. Hashem put inside Bilam's mouth brachot. He wanted to say kalalot, and Hashem turned it around. One of the things he did was describe different types of Jews. Different types of Jews. And these Jews, you'll see in the Pasuk, he says they are spread out like streams. They're spread out like beautiful streams. Kenachalim, natuya. They are like gardens that are by the river. That's number 2. Gardens by the river. Yeah? They are like spices which God planted in Gan Eden. That's number 3. And finally, they are like arazim alemayim. They're like cedar trees that are planted by the water. So we have 4 descriptions in this pasuk of Bilam giving a comment. What are these 4 descriptions really all about? So the rabbis, the rabbanim, give us a beautiful interpretation of these 4. Let's do them again. They're like streams of water. They're like gardens by the river. They're like spices which God planted in the Garden of Eden. And they're like cedar trees, Ares Lebanon, which are by the water. What are these 4 things? So first of all, whenever you see water being mentioned, En Mayim Ela Torah. En Mayim Ela Torah. Mayim, water, is always a metaphor, a mashal, for Torah. Because water flows, it's life-giving. Without water we die, without Torah we die. Water always goes down, right? It's impacted by gravity. So to people who are down and low, they are humble, the water will come to them, right? That's why Moshe Rabbeinu is described as the humblest person who ever stepped foot on the earth, right? Adam Anav Ish Ma'od, he's described in the Torah. And that means, that's not just a compliment, that means he became the greatest prophet because he was such an anav. He was so humble, and therefore he was low, he made himself low. The water flowed to him more than to anybody else. So whenever you see water, water is life-giving, it brings life in fruits and vegetables and humans. We're mostly made up of water. Water, en maim ela Torah. So they're spread like streams. So the streams refers to people, like Shmuel Hanavi, says the Gemara, who go like streams in order to disperse Torah. That's the best. The people who go and travel from city to city in order to give Torah to other people. They're like streams of water. And that is the first group that Bilam mentioned. But some people are like gardens by the river. The gardens by the river take use of the water. However, they are located in one place. They're located like gardens by the river, and they study Torah, but they're not really out there helping people. People come to them. They're like the judges, the shoftim, who sit in one place, and people come to them for directions. They differ from the first, because the first group are out there pushing Torah. These people are located in one location. What are these spices that God planted? These are people who study Torah, but they don't have any talent to teach Torah. Some people just study Torah. People don't seek Torah from them, and they certainly don't go out to teach Torah because they don't have a talent for that. So some people's mission in this world is just to study Torah. And make no mistake, that still impacts the world. Just sitting down by yourself, not teaching, not being consulted, but just studying Torah impacts the world in a very great way. They're like spices in the Garden of Eden. They're there, right? No one accesses them, but their effect is being felt through the entire world. What's the last group over here? The last group are those compared to the arazim, to the cedars of wood that are found next to the waters. Who's that? Who is compared to wood over here? So the wood, the cedar people, are the people who support Torah. They are the ones who financially support all the other 3 groups. And they are very, very important groupings. Because without the Kemach and Torah, without them, the faucet of water, right, the river is not able to flow. They need to be supported. So even Bilam was able to understand that the success of the Jewish people are the people who have Torah and spread it far and wide like a stream. The people who study Torah, sit and wait for people to come to them. People who just study Torah without anyone else knowing or accessing that Torah in any way. But he said that the people who are like cedar trees are always referred to meaning strong and important. Those are the people who uphold the Torah. And we see that wood was used. Wood, by the way, is a good thing because it grows and it keeps growing. But wood was used in the Mishkan. Where was it used? Well, first of the Krashim, right? The planks of wood to create the Mishkan itself, the tabernacle, but also the Torah. The Torah was in the Aron, nachon? And there was wood inside. There was wood inside the Aron. That wood inside the Aron and those poles that carried the Aron are the people who financially support. They are the carriers of the Torah. They are like cedar trees that get greater and greater and more powerful. That's what they are. So Bilam was referencing them and saying that we need all four groupings among the Jewish people in order to exist into the future. Our word should be an aliyah for Lili Safra, Leah Bat Chana, Bezrat Hashem. And we should all continue learning Torah and building our Bet Knesset in her honor. Bezrat Hashem. Have a great day.